Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go.
Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I am your host, Tracy Stuckrath, founder of Thrive Meetings and Events, and this podcast, Eating at a Meeting. I also have a Facebook group called Eating at a Meeting, so be sure to join it. It's free to join, and all we do is talk about eating at a meeting and all aspects of that, which is also what we do on this show. And this month is Women's History Month, or Women's HERStory Month, as I like to call it. And I am highlighting some women that are doing very cool, interesting, fun, and unique things in food and beverage around the world. And I'm excited to bring to you today Tala Ahmadi. She is a permaculturist, yogi, and food lover based in Accra, Ghana. She has an urban farming company called June, where she designs, builds, installs, and manages urban farms for private residents, schools, restaurants, and office buildings. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Happy to be here.
I'm so excited that your cousin mentioned you at dinner one night while we were having dinner in Vegas. And he's like, you really should talk to my cousin. So I'm very thankful that I found you, especially since you're in Western Africa, and it's not going to really kind of Google that to find it, but I'm glad that we did. I'm really interested in the fact that you started gardening in your backyard and you ended up, it said 3 garden beds quickly expanded into over 30 fruit trees and 75 different types of fruits and vegetables that then prompted you to start June.
Indeed. So I became interested in permaculture, which is very broadly kind of a way of living your life to be as sustainable as possible. And kind of one of our golden rules in permaculture is every output becomes an input for something else. When applied to farming in particular, it's about being very intentional about the existing natural elements. So we think about, where's the sun at different times of day? What is the elevation? Where gets the most rain? Where is soggy? Where is the wind circulating? And we actually plant fruits and vegetables according to these existing elements. So we're working with nature rather than against it and saying, we're just going to do monoculture and that's it. We're very much creating like an ecosystem to mimic the natural patterns that already exist in nature. So I got my certificate with the Ghana Permaculture Institute, actually, and our practicals were in my backyard. So that's how this whole thing started.
All of the other students' practicals were in your backyard as well?
It was actually a one-on-one training. So it was a very personalized, kind of customized to my backyard in particular.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not like I could just go into my front yard or my backyard. I mean, I could and just plant something and think it's going to blossom. I need to really think about all those things that you mentioned. Yeah,
so you could, but it certainly wouldn't be the most productive, right? And it's all about, actually, permaculture is all about minimizing the amount of effort that you have to put in to reap abundance. So it's really about allowing nature to work for you rather than against you. So we also do a lot of natural irrigation ditches to minimize your watering. We apply mulch to make sure that suppress weeds and also minimize your watering. So it's all about thinking, how can we work with what we already have in our space to maximize our production?
Oh, so many neighborhood gardens and backyard gardens would blossom if we followed all that.
Absolutely. It's true. And it could be in the form of a raised bed. We also do use a lot of what we call like companion planting. So we plant plants intentionally that grow well together and also maximize what we call the edge effect. So seeing also the edge bed as an opportunity to plant, for example, marigolds, which are edible flowers that also repel certain insects. So they kind of act as the first line of defense to your main crops in the center of the bed.
Okay. And I'm not sure if you have deer in your backyard, but what keeps deer away?
So we actually
And
we don't
bears.
have this problem. We don't have this problem in Accra. But the best thing, unfortunately, for deer is like a 10-foot high fence that they cannot jump over.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah, that would be really kind of hard. I'd have to get neighborhood approval to do that. So tell us about, okay, well, actually, I want to understand how you got to West Africa and to Ghana and to doing this. So can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, of course. So I first came to Ghana as an exchange student, actually. And this was when I was in my undergraduate studies. I had
Okay.
my first time to Africa broadly was when I was 15, actually. And I was a fellow with a nonprofit organization that was trying to link students who needed funding for their school with potential donors. And I was interviewing students actually to write their biographies for this website. And it was an incredibly humbling experience. So I come from a pretty privileged bubble in Maryland, and just understanding some of the challenges that these students face. And in the face of such adversity, how positive and how happy they were really humbled me. And I came back to the US and had a lot of reflection and was hooked kind of on exploring more parts of Africa from that experience. And it was very much a random selection of, okay, I've never been to West Africa. Let me try Ghana. It was only supposed to be a 6-month program. I extended for a year. I came back to UCLA to graduate and then immediately ran back and have really been here ever since. So almost a total of 7 years.
Wow. That's really amazing. And your work outside of your work, you got a job there then with doing financial support, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah, correct. So I work for a really amazing company as my full-time job called Strategic Impact Advisors. And we do a lot of work at the intersection of agriculture and digital finance. So we, for example, help support farmers in designing financial solutions for them. So it could be designing innovative credit products. Farmers often, a lot of time, especially smallholder farmers, have issues with access to collateral. And so we try and work with financial institutions to think about how we can do credit scoring in a different way to still make sure that a basic financial service, access to credit, is available to them.
Yeah, because farmers they're relying on their crops to grow to make money. And when maybe their crops fail because of global warming or whatever, they don't have anything to then pay that bill back, right? Yeah,
absolutely. And it's huge risk, right? So you find that a lot of the financial institutions in Africa, and I can speak to Ghana more specifically, are very wary of lending to this segment. It's deemed the most highest risk, actually. And already interest rates are quite high in Ghana generally, just because we don't have as robust as a credit referencing system as we do in other markets like the US. So it is a huge problem in farmers being able to actually access the inputs that they need in order at the beginning of the season in order to make their farm successful throughout the season.
Well, and it's just like this full circle thing too, because these are the individuals who are making food that goes on all of our tables, and they're the highest risk to support at the same time.
Exactly.
But isn't the risk of not allowing them to grow the food or the risk for the rest of society at the same time?
That's such a great way of putting it, Tracy. It's exactly what you said. And I think that's really what our role is, to get financial institutions to recognize how critical these farmers are to food security across the world, and how we can find alternative ways to reduce their risk and empower them to be able to access the financial services that they need to be productive.
Wow. And with June, and I asked you just before we got on, like, what the meaning of that was, but so I'm interested in the fact that you do teach it to resident schools and office buildings, but you also help a lot of your farmers as well from your job, looking at this urban farming aspect of it. So tell us a lot more about June.
Yeah, sure. So June, as you said in the beginning, is an urban farming company, and we try and apply permaculture principles wherever we can. So beyond just designing we also construct everything in-house. So we build all of our raised beds ourselves. We build all of our trellises. We also build what we call kind of permaculture homestead structures. So we've installed rainwater catchment systems for people to be able to more sustainably irrigate their garden. We also construct composting systems so you can reuse your food waste and make it into a beautiful medium to feed your garden. And we also build what we call solar herb dryers, which you can actually take basil or flowers from your garden, dry them, use them in spices for your meals, or use them for teas. So we're trying to help people kind of be full circle again, like linking back to that permaculture concept of every output can be an input. So, but indeed, as you mentioned, the training piece. So we also work with an incredible organization called the Ghana Food Movement. And they are an association of amazing people involved in the food system, from chefs, food scientists, food bloggers, you name it. And we actually worked with them on a program that they have called Farm Accra, where we're trying to basically build more urban farms in the city. And through that, we did 3 sessions of training youth in Accra on how to create like a small urban farm from upcycling materials and also using food waste as well.
Okay, so that just totally, like, I want to delve right into all of that, but I wanted the word upcycling. I want to jump on that and food waste. And just before the show, I was telling you about how there's the U.S. Upcycling Association that I found out about last week. But we've talked about it in some meetings, industry associations, let's look at upcycling and what that is. And I did it this morning, and I'm going to do a post on this, is like I juiced some carrots. And when you use the juicer, you get the pulp of the carrots left. And most people are going to just throw that away and dump it. But I'm going to use it on salads, and I'm really going to make a carrot cake or carrot something else, right? Do that. But it's a really important part of our food system that we learn to not dump it, trash it, but then utilize it.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
How are people doing that where you are?
Yeah. So composting is one of the easiest ways to do that and the most effective, especially if you have a garden where you can actually turn this into a beautiful nutrient-rich medium to fertilize your garden naturally. And then there's so many other tips and tricks. So for example, onions, like you can actually grow onions from onions. So once you're done eating an onion, using an onion, you keep the root part. You can actually plant that directly, the root part, covering it like maybe 1 inch in soil. Or if you want to, there's another way of just putting that in a glass of water and allowing the sprouts to come and then planting it. For bananas too. So banana peels, you can pop in water and let it sit for a few days and then use that to water your garden and give your plants a natural calcium boost. So I think it's really about reimagining and thinking critically before you toss something in a plastic bag that's going to take quite a while to degrade. How can I maximize this? Eggshells as well, right? You can crush up eggshells and you can get calcium as well by putting them in your garden. Coffee grounds will fix nitrogen into your soil. So it's really about being more intentional. The easy thing, of course, is to just toss it and you forget about it.
Right.
But that your waste trail doesn't end when you toss it in your bin, but has a lifespan that it could be put to better use if you thought a bit more critically about how you can really maximize it.
Well, it'd be interesting to find some of the convention centers and hotels that are putting farms on top of their roofs.
Yeah.
And like, are they taking the roots of the onions and putting them up in that and growing them there? And even and I've done it before. I've made our carrot top pesto, like carrot, the greens from that, and utilizing that. And I just said doo-doo. I do put some of that stuff in a plastic bag in the freezer and then make broth out of it later on.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do that as well.
My friend Nancy Waldeck taught me how to do that. So what kind of results have you seen? I mean, you've done hundreds of these, but has it changed your neighbors and your clients' perspective on the food system in general, or what they put on their table?
Yeah. So maybe I'll highlight one project in particular that I'm really excited about, which is is we actually work with a nurse here in Accra, and we set up a small urban farm for them. And then we do programs with the students twice a week. And it's been really beautiful to watch the evolution of how the students perceive where their food comes from, especially so young, where their brains are so moldable. And what we do also, they take home like a pet plant. And then every week they give us like a progress report on how the plant is doing. And you can really see the connection that they have with these plants. They really do see them actually, in fact, as pets. So that for me has been one of the most rewarding ones we've done, just because you can really see how the kids are already shocked at how a cucumber grows or shocked at how a tomato grows. We think when we go to the supermarket and it's just all neatly there, we don't really think about all the effort and the time that went into the production of that fruit.
Right, exactly. And I know that, and then they can take it home and say, hey, Mom, I mean, they are taking it home, but hey, Mom, let's use my food to make in our dinner. Right. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Do you see them wanting to do their own raised beds in their backyard?
Yes. We have. So a lot of the parents have reached out to us like, our kid is super inspired. Can you build a small area where he can play around with growing food? So we've definitely seen them take it home and want to replicate it themselves, which is really rewarding to see.
That's really cool. And I hope that grows more, pun intended. So I know this is just a fun random question. All right. You're a yogi. Do you do yoga? Do you teach yoga in your garden?
No. So I don't teach yoga in my garden. I teach yoga through actually a studio called Accra Yoga, which is where I received my certificate. The problem that we have in Ghana is one, heat. So heat cannot be underestimated. It is incredibly hot. And the second is mosquitoes that carry malaria. So if we were to do it in the evening, it wouldn't be a good idea.
No. Okay. I'm going to stay out of your garden at that time. So, and one of the things that you told me when we were sharing beforehand is that, and I shared it in the description of this, is that you grew up in a Persian family, or you are Persian, but with your grandmother. So can you talk, and you said how important it is how important food is to the Persian family's existence. Can you talk about that and how that actually like goes into what you do now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my father is the quintessential example of a Persian foodie. I mean, everybody in my family that is Persian is a foodie. It's everybody, literally. So we all value a good meal. But the thing about Persians, and maybe most cultures, but Persians in particular, our daily schedules are centered around our food.
Okay.
It's really true. And we organize pretty much everything around our meals. My grandmother, who is a tiny machine, she's 95 years old, but if you are in Costco, you better watch out because she will knock you over with a cart. So she's a tiny machine that wakes up at 4 a.m. almost every day on the dot. The first thing she does is prepare her husband breakfast, even though he wakes up a few hours later, but she just has it ready. And then she goes on to prepare a massive, like 3-course lunch at this early in the morning, like stewing barberries and stewing meats and marinating. So it's almost in our DNA to be obsessive about food. And Tracy, if you were to come to me or Mehdi or my cousin's house, the first thing we would do is force you to eat. And even if you didn't want to eat, you will be forced to eat and overeat and eat again, finish it with tea and a sweet. Like it's just our nature to force people to eat. So it's definitely, growing up in her kitchen. And my parents were very busy young professionals, and we're really lucky to have my grandparents available to provide daycare support. At such a young age, a lot of memories are blurry, but the scents and the smells and preparing meals with her is something that to this day is really vivid. I mean, going on her porch and picking grape leaves from the tree to make homemade dolme. She always had jars of torshi, which is like a kimchi equivalent in Iran. So it's always just part of our very DNA, I feel, as Persians, to be extremely passionate about food.
And then what do you do? Do you get up at 4 a.m. in your own kitchen now? And
absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, but actually, my inspiration now is from my farm. So
Okay.
I have not bought salad for probably almost 3 years.
Wow.
We're starting to think about also selling our own salad mix, and we're using non-traditional ingredients. So fun fact that sweet potato leaves are the most perfect salad base, and
Really?
and they grow extremely well. You don't really have to worry about them. So our base is sweet potato leaves, and then I just pick whatever else is green and edible in my garden. I'm really trying to have at least one salad a day from my farm. So I tend to design my meals now around what's in season and what's available in my backyard.
Oh, that's fantastic. That now makes me curious because I'm going to go to the farmer's market here in town and ask the person who sells the sweet potatoes. I'm like, what are you doing with the leaves? And see if they have them. Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting because we really kind of stick with, okay, here's our romaine, here's spinach, and I'm a huge arugula fan, but looking at those other, I mean, I love kale and I love collards, but how do you incorporate all of those in a mixture? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we toss moringa in there, which is a superfood tree that grows super well here. So we're experimenting a lot with what can we add to a salad to spice it up and might make you think a bit differently about what is traditionally a salad.
You mean iceberg lettuce at restaurants?
Exactly. Like some shaved carrots.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And when I go to a restaurant and I'm like, I want a salad, it literally is basically iceberg lettuce and shaved carrots and maybe some onions. All right. Nina, she's a chef, just said sweet potato leaves can be used any way that you can use spinach. Okay, great, Nina. Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to definitely look for them. And I know looking at even beet leaves, right?
Yeah.
How do you utilize those?
Yeah. You can steam them, saute them. Right. Yeah.
Does it make when you pee, do the beet leaves make your pee red, just like eating the beets do?
I've never had that. No. But
Okay.
I recently learned about something else that's edible that you wouldn't think about, which is cauliflower and broccoli leaves. Because I'm growing cauliflower right now, and I have so many of the leaves, and I never knew that I could eat them, but I recently found out that I can, and they taste very much, they're in the brassica family, which is where kale is also from, and they taste very similar to a kale. So it's really about opening our minds to what we've been conditioned to think as I feel in America in particular, we like to put food in boxes. Right. But I think it's beautiful to break that box a bit and see how we can be more creative with our food to also have salad maybe in a season where our traditional salad doesn't grow.
Right. Exactly. Well, and even I went to the grocery store. All right, Nina's just piping in here again. Grow spiragalio broccoli. It's a leading varietal. Okay.
Thank you.
But going to the grocery store last night to get stuff for salad mixings, because I just came home from 2 weeks, and it's like, okay, I got my radishes. I got some I had carrots at home. I got some mixed different kinds of lettuces to do, and I added chickpeas on there. But it just reminded me of that when you said the boxes. I'm like, here are the standard things that we put in salad, right?
Yeah.
And I got bell peppers, right? And did that. But we have to think outside of the box, which then takes me back to the Atlanta or the Decatur farmers market, which was the size of a football field. And they had fruits and vegetables from all over the world. Wow. And that actually got me into eating a lot of different varietals of food because you think differently about what goes on that salad.
Absolutely.
So how do you define safe, sustainable, and inclusive food?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. It's a tricky one, but in thinking about it, so when I go to let's say you go to the supermarket, right? And something catches your eye. I think there's 3 questions that you should ask yourself. So the first is, what are the ingredients? We have to keep in mind that a lot of corporate agribusinesses know what our triggers are. They know that if we see sugar-free or low fat, we're automatically more inclined to perceive that as being healthy, when in reality, what is that sugar being replaced with? Is it aspartame?
Right.
Is it a chemical? So my first step is actually looking at the ingredients. If there's something I cannot pronounce, usually I put it back. If
High five.
So virtual high five.
Yeah.
So that's my first question. If it passes that test, then I look at the packaging. So is it something that is a recyclable plastic? Is it something that I could upcycle to use, for example, to start seeds or maybe to grow basil or something? Is it compostable would be the best option. If it passes that test, then I ask myself a third question. What is the brand? Is it a brand I can trust and support? Is it a brand that has certifications like fair trade, local, certified humane, Food Alliance certified? Do I know anything about the working conditions of this company? And if I don't really know anything, I just do a super quick Google search when I'm in the supermarket and see if there's anything that comes up about this company. So I try and follow those three questions: the ingredients, the packaging, and the brand when I make decisions.
That's really interesting. And I love those questions because it's really important to think about. And I am one that I'm like, I want 9 ingredients or less, preferably 5 in a packaged food. But if I can't say it, I don't want it. And I just came back from a big convention, and I think the word vegan was put on a lot of things. And a lot of things were gluten-free. And I did something in the Eating at a Meeting Facebook group that says, just because it's vegan doesn't mean it's free of top allergens. Because 5 of the top allergens are vegan in themselves, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really important to think about that. But we really do need to learn how to read our labels. And I wish we could. Actually, one person on their label, it was tapioca, but the FDA required them to put the scientific name on it. And they put tapioca in parentheses. So I'm like, okay, why? I don't know why on that one, but that kind of flabbergasted me. But I love those rules when you're looking at it. So in an essence, you're shopping on the outside of the grocery store first and foremost, and then going inside. And from where you are and with what you're doing with giving farmers financial security, helping them get financial security, as well as building farms, urban farms, what does food inclusion mean to you? And how do you see that playing into what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think at a very rudimentary level, for me, at least, I think it means people everywhere and anywhere can have access to fresh produce, period. That's a lot easier said than done. Absolutely. But the best way to do that is indeed by growing your own food. And I feel, especially in the US, this is a very daunting thing sometimes. And maybe we have the perception that, I don't know, consultants, we can't be farmers. Like, that's just not feasible. But you can actually start very small. I mean, even if you have a balcony, let's say you don't actually have a lot of space to grow, just starting with herbs is a perfect place to start. And once you taste how fresh, like a fresh mint tea from your garden is, you're going to get hooked, because that flavor is unparalleled to buying mint that's in plastic packaging that's probably been at the supermarket for a few days. So I think the first part of achieving food inclusion is by being empowered to grow your own food. And that's also that's the core. That's the core of our mission really at June, is to empower people to grow their own food. I think the other thing that we also have to do a lot of work on is empowering people to make easy, quick, and nutritious meals from fresh produce, especially in areas where there's food deserts and maybe your only option is a McDonald's or a fast food. But by disseminating more information around how you can quickly whip up something from a few ingredients, and it could cost maybe even less than how much it would cost to feed a family at 5 at a McDonald's, is something we also need to do a lot more work on.
Well, and I think that's really important to share, especially with the cost of food going up right now, the war and gas prices and all of that. I think learning how to do that is really important to help save you some money in the long run.
Yeah.
And I think
absolutely.
medical bills too, right?
Yeah.
Growing your own food could help you reduce your medical bills.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, we have a serious obesity pandemic in the United States. And I think a lot of it is, which is changing now with all of the vegan movements and the vegetarian movements. I do feel that there's more attention being placed on recognizing we are what we eat, and actually what we put in our body at every point is an opportunity to nurture it, to heal it, and to support it, rather than to do the opposite. So I think for so long, American culture has seen food as something to make you full. We're going to chow down a burger in between like a half-hour lunch break. No, that's not a productive and a healthy relationship with our food. And I think you can see it in our obesity problem as well in the US.
Right. Well, and I think that obesity problem is extending outside of the US as well, because it is, and diabetes is actually, I think the World Health Organization said it was the epidemic of the 21st century. And that comes with obesity too. And I do think one thing that I thought was really important that you said is that we have to learn how to make quick meals out of fresh food, because I think everybody thinks it's a very daunting task, and it does take a little bit longer, but there are do you have some suggestions on ways that you can do quick meals?
Yeah. So I would say two things. One, a salad can be more powerful than you think. I think a lot of times we perceive salad as we're not really full afterwards. It's not exciting, but there's so much you can do. It's almost like a canvas. You can add hummus to it. Sprouts are like the easiest thing to grow. All you need is a jar. You can add sprouts to it. You can add brown rice to it. Like there's so much you can add on to a salad that's quite easy to do and simple. You don't really have to cook. I think the other thing is investing in a pressure cooker. I love using a pressure cooker because you just toss everything in the pot and you walk away from it, and then it's ready and you have a full meal. So I do a lot of curries in my pressure cooker, a lot of stews. So it's a really easy solution to just prepare everything, toss it in, and then you walk away and forget about it.
And then you come home from work and your meal is done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crock pot. Yep. Or a crock pot. Yep. Definitely doing that. Okay. I like that idea. Okay. So Women's History Month. Has anyone influenced you throughout your career or influenced you in your life? Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my two grandmothers in particular. So I've talked a lot about my mom's mom, my dad's mom, who is my Persian grandmother. I think she's taught me how I can spread love through food and how food can really bring everybody together. And so I love to host dinner parties. I love to drop off treats from my farm for my friends. And I think in a lot of ways, I have adopted that from her, showing my love to my friends and the people I love through my food. And I think my other grandmother, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but my mom's mom taught me empathy. So she is the best listener I've ever known. She even learned how to use WhatsApp at age 80 around just to be able to communicate with me while I was here. Her philosophy was everybody deserves to be listened to and everybody deserves to be heard. Even if it's a random person on the street, she would probably be the only one to stop and actually give them the time of day. So I learned from her how valuable it is just to create space to listen to people and to be there for them, even if you're silent. And then, of course, I would be remiss to not mention my mother, who is my inspiration. She's my mentor. She is one of the strongest women I've ever met. She's also one of the most intellectual and intelligent people. She has been the CEO and the leader of a number of companies over the past few decades. And she's shown me how you must be firm as a woman. As a CEO, you have to make sure that you are heard and you cannot compromise.
Oh, I love all of those. And your mother's mother would be probably my best friend because I love talking to strangers on the street. And I will just randomly start talking to them and they're like, are you talking to me?
I love that.
Yeah. And one woman looked at me the other day really weird, but when I did that. So, okay. So women in the food and beverage industry, you've jumped right into this. I mean, you're in it with your full-time job, but you're also in it with June. What's that importance of being a woman in the food and beverage industry?
Yeah. So I think the most important thing to me, which I think I just mentioned as well with my mother taught me, is making sure you're heard. My absolute pet peeve is when somebody cuts you off and you haven't been able to finish your sentence. for me, that's the worst thing, that is the worst disservice that someone can do. So I stand firm in making sure that I'm heard when I want a point to come across. And I also try and be firm, but I also, from my grandmother, try and exercise empathy. Like, as a CEO, I am responsible for people's salaries. And I have to understand also that my workers are humans. They have vulnerabilities. They have issues going on in their life. So I try and be understanding, but also assertive, I think, in my leadership style. Yeah. And I think women in particular, especially as leaders, I do believe we do tend to have a better sense and a better ability to be more empathetic. And sometimes people can take advantage of because you are a woman. So I think for me, it's really been about, in my professional career, finding that balance between empathy, but also being firm and assertive.
I think that's really important, because we can get frustrated and emotional about something, but looking at it, how do we reposition it so that it is that way, and that our message is heard, and not the way that women are typically described as being so emotional. And this is what we're bringing to it. That's our empathy. So I love that. Yeah.
Or just relax. I mean, that word really pisses me off.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to relax.
I'm guilty of saying just breathe. I mean, and that's more when you're anxious, it's like, just breathe, right? And listen, and one of my old bosses, George Largay, who has passed away, but he used to tell me that silent and listen have the exact same letters in it. And
oh my gosh, I've never realized
isn't that cool?
That.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I love
that.
Really thinking about that, so that you're not cutting somebody off, and that you listen, and then without already having the answer to what you're going to say before you finish listening to them.
Yeah.
So, okay. So how do you want to be remembered?
I think I want to be remembered as someone that tried to, well, this is always shifting. I think as I grow older, it might change, but I do think first and foremost, I want to be seen as someone that tries to spread love. A core part of what we do when we teach yoga and when we practice yoga, it's also a core part of permaculture as well. So one of our ethics is people care. And that's all about making sure that what we do also creates opportunities for people as well. And we want to also share our farm bounty with people as well. So first and foremost, I think it's that. Maybe second to that is really empowering people to think critically about where their food comes from, and recognizing how you can be empowered to take control over your nutrition and your health just by changing your diet. It's not always that simple, but it can go a long way in improving how your mental mood is, how your body is, and your general perception and happiness. I find that I really am my most happy when I'm eating healthy and when I'm exercising regularly. So yeah, I think it would be empowering people to really recognize that you have the capacity to take control over your own nutrition and your health, and you don't need a small, shiny pill to do it for you.
Well, thank you, because I was commenting with my mom this morning on all the drug commercials that are on television,
It's
right?
crazy.
And I'm like, it is, and it was to cure this, whatever it is. And I'm like, I know there's medicine is necessary for some things, but let's look at food first, right? And Dr. Sabrina Falcure, she's just got her food as medicine certification last year. And she's a doctor. And I love that doctors are starting to do that too, looking at prescribing food versus prescribing a pill first. LA just like, oh, silent and listen, same letters. And then more, and the farmers markets to reopen in May. And yes. LA, ours are open. Mine is open all year long. So I'm really sad for you that it doesn't open until May. But I do know that does happen depending on where you are in the country. Mm-hmm. But it's getting to know those farmers and what they're growing and how they are part of our culture and our community. So I
absolutely
appreciate what you're doing and how you're doing that in Ghana. So one final question. Yeah. I mean, you're still in your 20s. Mm-hmm. And so what is your greatest career accomplishment thus far? And what goals do you have for yourself in June?
Yeah. So I think it is, you're right. It's been a short professional career for me so far, but I think what I'm most proud of is indeed just starting this company. I've been talking about doing it for around 2 years, and finally one day just mustered the courage to try. And it took off a lot more than I could have ever expected. Of course, we're not making millions. We're a very small company still, but in terms of, acquiring customers, we've never had a problem. We actually have, and a lot of times, too much demand to know what to do with it. So I think my idea of starting June really came from this experience of starting that farm in my backyard, right? Like, who wouldn't want this? And that was what I was trying to bring into the market. And I think just starting this company and the demand that we've had solidifies that question that I asked myself: who wouldn't want to grow their own food? So I think that is definitely what I'm most proud of. And for my future, I'm actually soon going to be getting my master's in sustainable food systems. So I'll be actually making my way back to the US to receive my master's. And through this program, I'm definitely going to think about how June can take another hat as well. But yeah, just being open to the opportunities that the universe chooses to place in front of me.
That's amazing. Well, I look forward to seeing where it goes and where you go with that master's. And I'm glad that there are options for that going forward, that we're looking at those things in education, because I think it's really important. So Thank you for what you're doing. I love it. You're welcome.
Thank you so much for talking with me.
You're welcome. And everyone, I am going to, let me get you can find Tala on Instagram, and you can find her on LinkedIn as well. And actually on Instagram, it's the June Farms. Look for that and see how she's helping other people grow food. And maybe, hey, you could give some advice to people via Instagram. How do I do that in my backyard here in North Carolina? Or wherever
absolutely.
they are. Okay. Well, fantastic. Until everybody, thank you so much for listening in to the Eating at a Meeting podcast live. We're celebrating Women's HERStory Month this month with women that are doing fabulous things and teaching us how to know where our food comes from and understand that and value that. So thank you, Tala, for that. I appreciate that. Until next time, everybody stay safe and eat well. And actually, tomorrow is going to be a special edition of that. I've got some women from New Jersey talking about food tours around the state. And I'm really excited about learning about what they're teaching there. So until then, stay safe and eat well. Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.